Did you know that half the climbers who die on Mount Everest actually made the summit? And they're found clutching their tools. So, why isn't the best gear enough? Well, that's what today's conversation is about. Greg Cleary, founder of Pinnacle Business Guides, breaks down why every entrepreneur needs a guide and how to spot one. I'm Nils Vigna, your business growth guide, and this is Courage and Breakthroughs. Greg, welcome to the Courage and Breakthroughs podcast. I'm thrilled to have you on the show today.
Thanks, Nils. I'm glad to be here as well.
Every person, and entrepreneur especially, has defining moments that shape their life. And you told me an incredibly powerful story from your childhood that I would really love if you shared. And we started right there because I know it meant so much to you. Would you share that story with us?
Sure. It's a story about a young married couple, Marie and Joe. They had 4 kids. This is back a while ago in a small town, St. John's, Newfoundland is where that happened. At that time, unemployment had spiked to about 30%. And Joe and Marie struggled like many people at that time. Joe was looking for work, had lost his job. He was a salesperson and couldn't find work with 4 mouths to feed. And so he went in search of work, and he went to Halifax and Montreal and just kept getting further and further away. And there was just no room. He didn't have a college degree. He didn't have a lot of skills. He was just a salesperson. He actually sold Johnson's wax on the island and went around. And he ended up in a small town called Niagara Falls, Ontario, where a gentleman gave him a chance to sell cars. And he just liked Joe's story about his 4 kids and how he's trying to support them, and just really appreciate that, and gave him a shot to go sell cars. This person was like well ahead of his time. He understood about culture and people, and that people have a strong why and a good motivation that they were going to figure it out, they were going to be successful. And so this person just believed in Joe, just said, hey, go give it a try. And so Joe was just incredibly gifted in the art of people. He came up with amazing stories and remembered everyone's names and realized he was in the relationship business. So Joe was in the social media long before there was social media. Like, he had matches that said the best salesman in Canada would like to sell you a car, and so would I. And he had coasters that we'd go around and give out to the bars as free, give them a whole sleeve of coasters. And someone just showed me that actually walked into a used store on Queen Street in Niagara Falls recently and brought in a stack of these coasters and said, if you lead a good life, go to church, say your prayers. When you die, you'll go to Newfoundland. So Joe was just that to the person. So while Joe was up in Niagara trying to figure things out, Marie couldn't make ends meet and ended up having 2 of the kids go off to an orphanage. And that's what you did back in those days. It was hard times around the bay and fishing and so on. And fishing moved out 200 miles offshore. If you couldn't afford to take care of your kids, you made them a ward literally of the state, and you put them in these places called an orphanage, and it was run by the Christian Brothers, and they would just take care of the kids. And, some people were there because they had no parents, so the parents died in a car accident or whatever, and some were just not wanted. And there was about 102 kids in this orphanage called Mount Cashel Orphanage. Joe eventually, after a couple of years, got things together and bought a little house and moved the family and got the kids out of the orphanage and moved the family up to Niagara Falls and moved to probably 1,000 square foot home, 3 bedrooms, one for the 2 boys, one for the 2 girls, and one for mom and dad, in one of those homes where they had the peak ceilings, and the bedrooms upstairs had those peak ceilings in them, and 1 bathroom upstairs and a half bath downstairs type of thing. And that was a formative time in my life. And part of the reason that was a formative time is, Nils, I was the little boy in that story. I was in that orphanage for about 3 years with my brother Steve. And I was in a very impressionable time, like from 9 to 12. And at that time, like, it's your middle school years, right? It's a very impressionable time. And I'm sure I have a lot of scar tissue around that. Scar tissue around like abandonment, fear of failure. I saw what happens when you don't have money. I remember my mom and dad would pick us up for lunch before he went on the road looking for work in those final few weeks. And that we'd be in the back of the car, and my brother and I, and we'd go off and we'd buy a sandwich and a bag of chips and whatever, and a glass of water. But mom and dad weren't hungry, or at least they said they weren't hungry. And now in hindsight, 20 years later, it wasn't that they weren't hungry. They just didn't have the money. And when you're poor, you just don't know you're poor. I mean, you ask anybody you interview, at the time, you don't know that secondhand clothes is secondhand clothes. If you're asking for a pair of shoes that cost $20 back then, they might as well have been $2,000, right? I mean, they were just so far out of reach. This was a time when Dad would bring home the paycheck and Mom would carve it all up into envelopes and say, okay, this is for food, this is for rent, this is for utilities, right? And you never spent the money on utilities or rent on anything else but utilities and rent. That is how I got to Niagara Falls and how I got out of Newfoundland and how I grew up.
This is just an incredibly powerful story. And to be in that kind of situation in those formative years, what was it that experience taught you that ultimately fueled the entrepreneurial side of your career, which started not long after that?
I think early on, when you're that young, you just realize no one's coming to the rescue. You got to figure some things out on your own. And so I would figure that out. My mom would borrow her brother's car, come pick Steve and I up on a Sunday, just to take us for a couple hours to go for dinner. And she'd have to bring us back to the orphanage. And I was like, can you imagine how hard that would be for a mom, right, to drop her kids off again? So I think I learned no one's coming to the rescue. You think you learn adaptability skills, right? You learn how to fit in really quick. Truly, like you hear these people saying they walked, 2 miles to school. We walked 2 miles to school. We would get up in the morning. We'd have breakfast, all of us, 102 kids. We would walk the 2 miles to school. There was nobody picking us up in buses. We would come home for lunch because we didn't pack food for 102 kids, right? Didn't buy lunches. So we'd come home for lunch. And if you were on lunch duty, when the lunch was over, if you were on lunch duty, you had to wash the dishes and clean everything up and put them back in the rack and into the machines, because after school, there was going to be dinner again. And so we came home 2 miles again at lunchtime, and you learn not to dolly. You got to get up a pace. So I think even today, I still walk fast today because I had to walk fast, right? If you took 30 minutes to walk 2 miles, you're going to be in trouble pretty quick because you're going to have to wolf down your lunch in 7 minutes. The orphanage used to do fundraising, and they had a raffle. And I remember being a bell ringer for the raffle at Christmas time downtown on Water Street. And I remember people would come into the raffle and they knew who the orphanage was, and they would win like a turkey or whatever, and they would never take the prizes. They just, donate them back. And I remember a couple of people give me a $2 bill in my mitten as I was ringing my bell. And I just remembered what that did to my spirit at that time, that I didn't know if they were feeling sorry or if they were just had kids or had their own story. So yeah. I think today I'm still more generous today. When I see people who are homeless, or my kids will tell you, they see somebody on the street, we're going to a hockey game or whatever, we've stopped, rolled down the window and made a donation. And I've had people tell me, Nils, one night we're out downtown Chicago after a steakhouse with a leadership team. And this lady approached me, and she had 2 young kids on the street. And she said, hey, can you help me? I'm trying to get to a hostel or whatever for tonight. And I gave her a $100 bill. And the guys that I was with said, Craig, that's just a scam. These people are just a scam. I don't know if it's a scam or not, but did you see those 2 kids? If that helped move them to their next chapter, then that's okay. So I think those were probably some of the things. And I still think that drives me today. Those demons drive me today to want to be a better person, to want to give back, to want to make an impact everywhere I go.
Those are incredible demons that drive you today. There could be much worse situation coming out of that. And I can vouch for the speed walking because I have walked with you since we know each other the last few years. Back to the thread of people coming into your life and you playing that role today, but there were many people who played that role for you along the way. And there was a particular individual named Jill who brought you into the world of Brian Tracy and started your selling career. And would you tell the story of what happened when you found out that Jill had passed away many years later, and what she meant to you and why it was so important that you were there to pay your respects to her?
Guides come around your life in different shapes and sizes, and they don't always look like guides, right? They don't come with a suit on, right? They just show up in different places. I was in high school, actually just at the end of high school, and hanging out with a group of friends. And I met a lady who's a mom of one of our friends in the group. And I was just starting my entrepreneurial journey. I was a busboy at the Skyline Tower in Niagara Falls. And I looked down the park and I saw that there was a lot of honeymooners and you couldn't buy a hot dog in the park. And so I created this business called Picnic in the Park, and I delivered little picnic baskets and my little bow tie and my white shirt and my little van, and I would drop them off to the honeymoon suites and different places all over the park, and they get to keep the baskets. And so this gal, Jill, at the time, she was in network marketing. I didn't even know what that was at the time. But she would ask me when I would see her daughter, Shelley, and say, how are things going? What's going on? And I would tell her my latest and show her my latest brochure and whatever. And she took a liking to me, just kind of no different than today, right? I know my kids' friends that show up and I take a liking to them. And I just gave one of them, a hockey player, some advice on pricing for his detailing business, right? You just get involved in those people. Jill asked me one time if I would like to go to a seminar for a guy named Brian Tracy. It was called The Psychology of Selling. And I thought, I think I would like to do that. And so she paid my way. It was probably $100, and she paid my way. And I went to that all-day conference. And at the end, I kind of got the bug. And Brian Tracy said, if you want to be a doctor, you study medicine. You want to be a lawyer, you study law. If you want to be successful in sales, you need to study sales. And I got the bug, and I said to Jill, I said, man, I would love to go to work in an organization like this. And I didn't know, but she was in Amway at the time. And so she had a plan. This was part of the organization, and they were going to add training and development to the organization. There was a guy named Bob Schmidt, who was a Crown Ambassador, one of the last Crown Ambassadors at that time, to become an Amway, which is like just the top. And so he had hired Brian Tracy and said to Brian, Brian didn't want to be all over speaking. He wanted to develop these tools. He wanted to do other things. And Brian said, how about if I buy these seminars, the FANG seminar and the Psychology of Selling, we put them on video, and I have these people go around and sell the videos and have people watch the videos and pay for it. And, Brian, you would get paid. You didn't have to show up. This was way ahead of its time, right? There was no YouTube channels. There was no streaming services. No one paid to watch videos or whatever. Very pioneering. I said that, yeah, I would love to go sell this. And Jill said, well, you're lucky. You could come and work under me. And here's how this works. We're going to sell this thing for $99. You get $20 every time you get someone to come to the hotel to watch it. And I thought, this sounds pretty good, because it's the psychology of selling. If I'm not good at selling, it's not my fault. It got to be the sales trainer, the sales material, whatever. I never wanted to be in sales, right? After seeing my dad move around and try all these sales careers, and my brother sold cars, my sister sold real estate, my other sister sold advertising. Like, I want nothing to do with sales. I got involved with Jill, and that first month I sold about 7 people into the seminar. So I made about $140. This was 1985. My car payment was $214 for my Mercury Topaz. The $150 was not very much, but Jill believed in me, and she encouraged me to stay. And they would, sometimes I'd get a commission check, or they give me an extra $100 because I really needed the $100. And she would write that check for me. And her husband, Robin, was in the business. I remember Robin's penmanship was amazing. And he would write this check and give this to me. And Nils, it felt like $10,000, right? When you got no money, you got $5 in your pocket and you need gas in your car, and you got a coffee meeting and you're hoping that they buy the coffee, rather than you, that's how close it was. Jill got me in the business, and I'm still in that same business 40 years later. But it was Thanksgiving last year. I got a call, and Jill's been in my house over the years. We always stayed in touch. I had great respect for her and Robin and their kids. And I got the call from Shelley that Jill had passed away. And I took the call, and I went back and I said to Julie, no, it's just a call, that Jill passed away. And I said, I think I need to go to that. One of the things I've said growing up is weddings are optional, but funerals are mandatory. If I miss the wedding, you're going to see them at the second party they have, at their anniversary, at the backyard, whatever. If they're truly close friends, right? You're going to see that. But funerals are kind of final, right? It's your last time to say goodbye. So I said, I'm going to go. I said, I'm going to work on my schedule. The service was on Friday. I'm going to make it all work. So I had a session in Chicago on Thursday. I booked some flights. I went out with the leadership team Thursday night for dinner, and I was going to get up Friday morning and go on the 10:30 flight to Buffalo, cross the border, go to Niagara Falls, go to the service in the afternoon. That was 2:30 to 4:30. And then there was a second viewing at 6:30 to 8 o'clock at night. I was all set. I had my mind made up. So where the story is interesting, it talks about commitment and quit and don't give up, is I went out to dinner that night with the team. I got back to the Drake Hotel in Chicago. I'm settled in early. It's about 10:30. I get to bed. I got my alarm set for 6:30. I'm going to be on that 10:30 flight. Everything's good. I wake up about 4:30 in the morning in a dead panic. And I'm going I'm in trouble. I realized I didn't have my passport. Nils, if you don't have your passport in 2025, you're not crossing the border into Canada and coming back to say you're going for a funeral, right? It just looks very suspicious. So I get up at 4:30 in the morning. I go into straight on problem solving, survival. No one's coming to rescue mode. I get out, open up Google Flight. That's the thing I type in. It comes up, and I'm like, what am I going to do? I find a flight that's leaving in a couple hours, 6:30. I got to get to the airport for 5:10. And I'm like, okay, I got to get moving. So I get up, I book a flight, one-way ticket from Chicago here to Minneapolis. Now, if you know downtown, the Drake, it's almost a 40-minute drive to get to the airport. I'm going to fly to Minneapolis to get my passport. I call my wife at 6:00 when I'm in the Uber and say, honey, sorry to wake you, but I need you to grab my passport and get to the airport. I'm going to be landing at 7:00. She says, really? Like, what do you need here? And I explained the whole story to her. I said, I can't go to Canada. Okay, I'll meet you at the airport. I said, see if they'll let you through security. Just meet me at the gate. Of course, they won't let her through the gate. I land at the airport. I say, can I leave my luggage here? I'm on Continental, not even my preferred carrier. I said, no, you got to take your luggage. So I take all my luggage out through the door, out through security. I see Julie there outside. I tell her I would administer her. I grab my passport. I kiss her on the cheek. I go back in through the thing. I bought a second ticket from Minneapolis back to Chicago. And then I bought another ticket from Chicago to Buffalo. It's the only way I could get there and make it work. So I bought 3 first-class tickets the same day of travel. Needless to say, I could have probably shipped that passport around the world about 20 times for the price of those tickets. But I landed at 4:30 in the afternoon. My nephew picked me up, Joey. We got across the border. We got through everything, customs, whatever. I made it to St. Catharines at 6:15. The service started at 6:30. I walked in at 6:30. I got to see the whole family. They had slideshow presentation. There were pictures of me, a younger me on the beach. Obviously, it was a important part of the family as well. I brought the new book, Peak Performance, that I just written a few months before. And that was the name of our company. When I started with Jill and Robin, we called it Peak Performance International. And so that was the name of the company. So that was almost like a throwback. I was honoring Jill, but I didn't know she was our final months. So I showed up and I did that and stayed overnight at my nephew's. And then first thing in the morning, up and out of there. It was just one of those things that I will never regret, going back and saying my goodbyes and telling the girls, Shelley and Brad, and how much mom meant to me as well. That's the weddings are optional and funerals are mandatory seminar I will give to my kids. And they also look right. It's not what you say, it's what you do. Yeah. And when they see you do that, they're like, they need to do it too, right?
Yeah. Yeah. That's an incredible example of just what it means to honor the people who have impacted your life. And you've been in a position for a long time now to be that person and be that guide for not only countless leadership teams and organizations, but also other individuals, and myself included. So I want to ask you a little bit about the term guide. And you've used it several times. You mentioned it in the personal context. We also use it in the business context, in the work we do with leadership teams. And you share more details about what a guide truly means to you.
So I think everybody's had guides in their life and they show up at different times. When I was in the orphanage, it was a priest called Greg Cull, C-U-L-L. Greg kind of like took me under his wing and protected me and, encouraged me to play basketball and try out for middle school basketball. And then when I got to Niagara Falls, I played basketball in middle school and then high school. And these people just believe in you. But the guides don't always show up as a consultant, right? With a pen and a piece of paper and a white coat or whatever, right? Like a doctor. If you looked at the famous guides in history, Yoda, Nero, Gandalf, they don't look like some of these old wizards or whatever, right? Or even in the Bourne Ultimatum, the analyst, she's just a young girl. Like you wouldn't think, right, that she had all this influence. But I believe everybody has guides. And that's a great thing to stop every once in a while and look back and ask yourself, who are the guides in your life? When I was going through a rough spot with Brian Tracy early on, and my dad had sold Dale Carnegie and wasn't very successful at it, and he said, Greg, you got to get a real job. You need a real job with a salary, like a paycheck. And Steve Wiley took me out and bought me a beer and sat me down and said, Greg, I've seen you at the front of the room, and I know you love this, and you just got to stay the course. Don't give up on your dream. Don't give up on yourself. And so that was just a friend of mine just giving me advice. And I just believed him, and I thought he had the best interest in like truly serving me.
Yeah.
So he was a great guide. So we've all had those guides. It could be a finance guy, it could be a fitness guy. I had my executive physical yesterday at the Mayo Clinic. That person, that consulting doc, is truly a guide on my health journey. If he says your B12 is low, he's really a great guide. And he told me that you're probably going to go take a B12 supplement type thing. Or if he said you should go get that spot looked at, you're going to go get that spot looked at if they're a guide. Guides are really important. And I think there's a big difference. A lot of people, use the term consultants, implementer, coach, advisor, counselor. I think all those have different meanings to them. To me, an implementer, if you're implementing a software system, you just run that software, you install that software system and just implement it. A coach is typically never on the field. Bill Belichick has never kicked a field goal. He's never run a play. He's never taken a snap. He's never going to, even though he's now back in the game again, right, at collegiate football. He's not going to do that. His job is to be on the sideline, developing the plays, running practices, but when it comes game time, he is not on the field. And so I really looked at this, and if you look back into even Greek mythology, guides have been around for thousands of years. Mentor was a guide. That's how we got the name mentor today. But they've been around since Greek mythology. They've been around for thousands of years. All the books that we write, the stories that have been passed down from generation to generation, it's almost always somebody's come along, showed up in somebody's life and believed in them and encouraged them and gave them a call to action. And so if you look at a coach versus a guide, I wanted to be a guide. If you look at it in today's terms, the guide is actually on the trail. If you're going to go hike Alaska for grizzly bear, I'm reading a book right now called The Comfort Crisis, and he's up stalking elk and caribou or whatever and saying how we need to get out of that comfort zone, that 68 to 72 degrees that we live in, how we're not even at the fringes of our life. You want a guide. If you're going to go hike the Appalachian Trail, maybe a guide. If you want to go whitewater raft, maybe a guide. If you want to go climb Everest, a guide is probably good. When people die on the mountains, and 50% of the people in Nels, as you know, die on the way down. And one of the things they do is they step over the bodies on the way down because they can't get them off the mountains. We have a speaker coming to speak to our group, Community Nels, in Denver. And Jason Weiss is his name, and he's conquered Everest and a whole bunch of other places. And we've had some great conversations. And some of his photography, the pictures he's going to show are spectacular. And they're pricey. But the reason they're pricey is he says, Greg, how many photographers do you know that stepped over 10 bodies to get to that shot? And he means in reality. But we've had a great conversation, and we talked about tool seduction is the conversation that we had. And they said, when they find these bodies, 50% of them have actually made it to the summit. They take the phones, they find the cameras, and they want to bring something back to the loved ones, right? And they can get those cameras, and when they recharge them and look at the pictures, they were at the summit, these people. When they find them, they noticed one thing, that they're clutching their tool, they're holding on to the empty oxygen tank. They're stuck on the rope, right? They couldn't go up, they couldn't go down. They're in their sleeping bags, they're in their tent. Thought that was going to save them, right? They were trying to hold on to their tools. And the observation, then the conversation that we had is they didn't need better tools. They really needed a guide. They needed a guide to say, you know what? You've got hypothermia. You actually don't take off your gloves. I know you feel like you're hot, but that's actually a sign of frostbite. Your hands are getting hot, like your cells are dying, right? You need someone to turn them around, not to give them a new tool. And so that metaphor of that guide who comes alongside of you, that's what we want to do. We want to come alongside of these entrepreneurs, give them a nudge when they need a nudge, give them a sounding board when they need a sounding board, challenge them when they need someone to challenge them. You know this, when you're the owner and you ask your leadership team, so what do you think? They all think, yeah, let's do this. They're not going to tell the emperor they have no clothes, right? That's just not what they do. But a guide will tell you. And so we use this climbing metaphor all the time, right? Growing a business is like climbing a mountain. And if you're going to go climb a big mountain, you want to hike in the base camp and you're going to acclimate, you're going to make sure you have the right team, but you're also going to make sure you have a good guide, that the guide's not nervous, that the guide's not throwing up, that the guide actually has a plan, that they have a weather app, they're checking the weather, they have a route up the mountain, right? It's just now, let's just go out and wander around the glacier and see if we fall into something good. We love that quote, the people at the top of the mountain didn't fall there. No, they got up about 4 a.m. in the morning and started their hike to the top of the mountain. So that's why we lean into the term guide. I'm, it sounds like I'm being nuanced, and I want to be nuanced. I think the guide is expected to show up and be on the trail. And the guide brings wisdom and experience and a call to action. And when you want to give up, they're in the gym with you saying, come on, you got 2 more. This is why you're here today. You can do this. You got 2 more. You got 2 more. You can do this. It's only mentally heavy. It's only go. Your muscles are just telling you to quit, keep going. And then you lift it and you do 2 more reps. I'm like, Greg, you just beat, last week when I was in with my Discover Strength guy, he loved it. Greg, you just crushed it. Like you just beat last week by 3 reps on this leg extension and 5 reps over here and 2 more reps over here. And that was 15 pounds heavier. They get more out of you than me reading a book, having an instruction manual along the way. That guide means a lot to me. And it's how I want to show up and who I want to be. And I think that is making it so much more rewarding to say I had a front row seat. I was there on the climb. I was there on the journey when we went from 3 to 5 to 7, locations, millions, whatever. I was right there and we had those stories. I just got an invite today to a great client of mine, 30-year anniversary. And it says, want to reflect on milestones, partnerships, the people who've been part of that journey. I watched this company grow 5X. And just be an amazing client for a decade and just awesome. I get to have a front row seat. And if you're guide, you get to do that. If you're the coach, maybe you see it, maybe you don't happen. So that's my deal with guides.
I love it. That resonated with me so much in our very first conversation a couple of years ago when you walked me through the entire Pinnacle system and approach and everything you just shared about the guide. And I thought that was so incredibly powerful because I had been in the coach seat, I had been in the consultant seat, and I knew as soon as you described that, I need to be in the guide seat. That is 100% where I belong. And that was why I jumped in right away and was like, this is absolutely the right next step for me. And so in that moment, you were acting as the guide for me. After 10 years of running my own business, I was lost. I had no clue what I was going to do next. I knew I needed to push myself. I knew I needed to go to another level, but I was literally floundering. And it was Steve Burnett, our fellow guide, who called me just out of the blue in January and at 5 o'clock on a Tuesday or a Monday night. And it could not have been a better time for that call. All things happen for some reason. I'm a firm believer in that. And that call was exactly what I needed because the next day I talked to you. And then 2 days later, I was signed up and became part of the Pinnacle community. And it's been a wonderful ride ever since.
Yeah. Okay. So Nils, and there's a place for consultants, right? And there's a place for a coach. There's a place for all of us. The consultant is designed to give the answer, right? Hey, we are stuck here. We don't know how to do this AI. We have this environmental issue. I got this challenge over here. Something's going on with the machine. It's not making the sausage type of thing. And the consultant comes in and digs in and they go, okay, so if you do this and change that, or here's what you need to do, right, for the mitigation or whatever. And the consultant gives you the answer. So they're part of that. Sometimes in coaching, right, it's very reflective and it's question-based and it's all around personal models. So it's like, do you have a growth mindset, right, or a fixed mindset, right? It's very reflective type of thing. There's a great place for that, right? Sometimes, like if you're going to diet or fitness or nutrition or you're trying to lose 20 pounds, maybe you need a coach for that to come in and really help you with that. And there's other times that that's not what you need. You don't need someone with all the answers. You need someone to come and teach me the tools and go on the journey with me. And after we go up and down that mountain a few times together, maybe I have less dependency on that guide because I've been there with them a few times. And if that's the case, go find a bigger mountain and go find a new guide, right? If that's what you want to do, type of thing. I do think there's a role for all of them. So to anybody who's listening who wears that consultant hat or wears a coach hat or an executive coach, I think, great. There's a place for you. And there's a place for us as well. If you want someone to go on that journey, to get on the trail with you, to be in the boat, rowing, paddling with you, there's a place for us on that. Not for the faint of heart. Absolutely. Building a business is hard. It's fun. It's rewarding. The view's great when you've hit the major milestones, but it also stinks in the depths of the quarters that are not turning out how you originally planned. And that is something taken away from you is that there are always going to be ups and downs in business and in life. And if you ride the ups and downs, it will be a forever roller coaster of emotions.
And that's why I believe in take the approach of just writing the through line. Acknowledge that there will be highs, acknowledge that there will be lows, but try to stay constant up and to the right. Curious for your thoughts on that approach.
I agree. And then and get back to climbing the mountain. Sometimes you're climbing the mountain and you actually have to go down, right? You have to go down to get water. You got to go down to the river. Or listen, there's a valley. I got to go through the valley to get to the next peak because this peak was actually a false peak. And I didn't know that till I got there and got down there. We learn more from the hard stuff. I call it the pain of people. A lot of our frustrations and setback and scars and stuff come from people that, that people that we poured into, that people who've let us down, that people who we just believed in or poured into or whatever. And then it doesn't work out or they leave. The only choice you have is you got to love them anyway. Give them the benefit of the doubt because we don't know who's going to be here years from now, who's going to show up at your funeral or your wedding. We don't know that at the time when we meet them. So we go on this journey with them, but you do learn more from the setbacks, from the hard stuff, from, scar tissue. Scar tissue is always stronger and tougher than original tissue. It's less likely to tear again right there, right? That scar tissue.
That's right.
So we don't want it to make us bitter. No, there's people who are bitter, like I'll never trust anybody. Like I'm never going to, and you don't want it to make you bitter. You want it to make you better, right? And just learn from that, go back and reflect and say the signals were there, the signs were there, or you know what? If I had to do it all over again, I would have done the same thing. I would have given them the money, the time, the benefit, the wisdom. I would have done it with them. I didn't know what they were going to do with it, but I would pour into them anyway.
Well, and I think that's the hallmark sign of a great leader is that regardless of the outcome, you give unconditionally to the people who work for you. And same thing we do with our clients. Whether they achieve every goal we set or whether they miss every target, it doesn't really matter. We're going to show up exactly the same way every single time and be that guide for them, just like they are for their employees. And just as you were saying before, that everybody watches more what you do than necessarily what you say. I think that sends an incredibly powerful message, especially to the leadership team, which has an outsized impact on the rest of the company.
Absolutely. I believe, just showing up, pouring into people, understanding that people are going to let you down, that it is about the journey and it is about the impact that you're making. It is a long game. Most people don't take the long view, they have a narrow view. We say this, you want to be all in. I'm looking for teams that are all in. Why? Because I want to be all in on you. And all in on you means, hey, you can't pay me this quarter. I've done sessions for free. We work through COVID or downturns or whatever with people. And we're like, no, it's like a marriage. It's through thickness and thin. It's from the good times and the bad times. And we're in this together. And this is not the time for you to fly the plane solo when it's a really bad, bumpy ride. This is not the time to skip having me come into the session. And when you're truly show up for your client like that, and you care more about them than the money, when you care more about the outcome and the culture, when you care more about the person, like when you say to that entrepreneur, that visionary, because it's lonely at the top, and you say, how are you holding up with all this? How are you doing? They started a new division. They're pouring millions of dollars into it. It's still 2 years away from profitability. How are you doing? They thought it was going to be easier. They thought it was going to, they forgot about the 20-year overnight success that made them. And they thought, how? I'm going to go do this. And so us being all in with them is a really important part of it. And again, back to chemistry. If you're going to spend a long time together, if you're going to work with it for years, you might as well like each other and be all in on the game.
All in is where the greatness comes out because there is no halfway with this. There's no halfway with a leadership team. There's no halfway with being a guide. It's all or nothing. And that's why we got to find the absolute right fit because the right fit will have outsized returns. Absolutely, 100%. Let me ask you this. Your career could have gone a lot of different directions. From the Brian Tracy, you grew to be incredibly successful. You ran entire cities of promotional events and getting people to his seminars and all those things. Why did you end up now here working with leadership teams? Because there could have been many different ways you could have gone down the path. So how did you end up in this spot?
I have to pitch myself sometimes because I don't know if it's master plan, luck, or just divine plan, or are we in a sim? Mills, is it just a
could be?
plan?
It could be.
I look back at my career. So with Brian Tracy, I moved to Toronto. I moved into an apartment building called The Summit. And my first business with Jill, right, is called Peak Performance. And that, of course, had mountain implication. I buy a lodge, a session room in my previous life, and it's on Eagle Creek Circle, and it's in Savage, Minnesota. And I mean, I just go on down the list. Like, could all these things truly just be a coincidence that I'm going to show up in here, fast forward 40 years, and I have a business called Pinnacle. And it's all about quarterly summits and the climb and the journey, and there's joy in the journey. I think there's a couple things. One, I think part of my success is I've stayed the course in what I was doing. Number two is I evolved. I think this ideal of flexibility in evolving, when I look back, if I was not willing to evolve, I would have been out of business a long time ago. We did these mega events, Nels, where we put thousands of people in the ballroom, and Brian Tracy could get on stage, or Harvey McCabe could get on stage and say, now, if you just got one idea from today, it paid for itself. Well, that all went away, right? Today, you can pop on a podcast, and before you get down the block and out of your neighborhood, you've got one idea from the podcast, right? Then the model changed, and then we were doing the train the trainer model. And it was video and audio cassette, and we would certify people because they didn't want this general somebody out talking about, sales. They wanted business to business sales for HVAC contractor or whatever. And so they're looking for something very specific. So I said, you bring your personalized knowledge, and we'll bring some concepts and frameworks. Well, again, that would last about 10 years. And then YouTube came out. And when I started with Harvey McCabe, you'd call and say, can we book Harvey, for Swim with the Sharks? And we'd say, sorry, Harvey's booked for those dates all that week. And I'll say, but if you like, you could rent his video for $2,000. Or you could rent the Chart House had a video called Fish Philosophy. You could rent it for $500. It was a license for one-time use. You showed it. Now, if you can imagine how grainy that was on a big screen back in those days, you could show Harvey's talk for $2,000, or you could try and find another date when he's open, to pay him $25,000 for the talk. Well, all those things are gone. All those speakers, Gittimer, there's 400 videos out there for everyone. Jack Canfield, Brian Tracy, hundreds of these videos out there. The models just kept changing, and I stayed current with the models. It's like the weather. I'm like, you can complain about it, or you can set your sail. Or if you want to grow fruit trees in Minnesota, you better find out what type of apples grow here. We don't grow a lot of soft fruit here. You're not going to find a pineapple tree or a banana tree in Minnesota. Now you're going to find some hardy peaches and some plums, but you got to figure out what will grow in your environment. Jim Rohn talks about this. That's the set of the sail. So I just looked and set my sail, and about every 10 years, the models seem to change. If the outer world is changing faster than the inner world, then you're about to be disrupted. You just don't know it yet. And that is true in many of our teams. That's what we do, right? We hold up this mirror and say, hey, you need to change faster. You need to adopt faster, right? The world is changing faster. And if you don't like change, you're going to hate irrelevance. You're going to be obsolete anytime soon. And that's a fun exercise. Either have them make a list of all the things that have been obsolescence in the last 20 years, right? Computer labs, film, calculators, even watches. Like the kids don't want to wear a watch today. Everything's on their phone. So that is a challenge. And I think that's part of the guide. The guide has to look and see what is going on in the world. And we have to bring that level of thought or challenge people's thinking to say, sometimes we show up, Nils, and we'll say, okay, listen, team, private equity bought us last week. They're about to make some changes. You are the private equity team. What would you change right now in this company? And you say, well, I'd close that bridge. I'd do this. I'd change that. I'd change the compensation over here. I'd get that out of that project. I'd start the project. Okay, team, well, good news. Private equity did not buy us this week, but we are the same leadership team, and it's up to us to figure out how we can do these things. So let's go disrupt ourselves. And that energy just goes up in the room and like, okay, we're going to close the Duluth branch. We're going to close that bridge. Yes, we're going to stop propping up that bridge. We're going to close that. So I think that's part of our role, is to show up and look at the weather clouds and get them to constantly involve. Business is an infinite game. It's never over. It's less than 4 quarters, right? God had a master plan. There's 4 seasons. When would you put spring if it wasn't after winter? Where would you put summer if it wasn't after spring? Where would you put fall if it wasn't after a hot, humid summit in Arizona or Minnesota? You'd put it in the fall, right? That's when you would put fall, is right after summer. I think that's part of our role, is to continuously challenge them to evolve and to grow. We say to our leadership teams, hey, you need to be a better leadership team this year than you were last year. If last year you remembered it was their anniversary and you asked about mom and you made a real big deal of the 25th anniversary, what are you doing this year for the emerging leaders or for the person who had a 30-year anniversary? You've got to be a better leadership team this year than we were last year. And so that's, I think, what makes us relevant and it also forces us, Nels, to read books and bring in speakers and to learn from each other and share best practices and to constantly say, okay, how do I up my game? I'm going into a quarterly summit tomorrow, a quarterly summit on Friday, and it's not just another day of the week for me. It's not Thursday and then Friday. It's the most important day of their quarter. And I got to get everyone on that leadership team to set the priorities because they're going to go back on Friday and set the priorities for everybody in the entire organization to get them all rowing in that same direction. And so it is a big day for them. And I treat it like it's a big day for them and help them be a better leader.
Love it. Yeah. There's such a simple but unique piece in this guide world that also is heavily influenced by the fact that we are outside of their organization. And I would love for you to share a little bit about just how important that is, because there are a lot of people who say, yeah, well, you're not in my business every day. How can you possibly be in that position? And we have all these people inside. We think about these problems all day, every day. So what is it about the outside nature of a guide that makes the difference as opposed to someone trying to chart this from inside the walls of the business?
I love that question. I'll give you three answers. One is you can't read the label from inside the jar. So number one. Number two, I like to ask leadership teams to say, listen, can I ask you a question? Who discovered water? And they stop, they think, we should know this, right? Was it Christopher Columbus? No, he sailed across the water. Who discovered water? And eventually they come to this conclusion, say, I don't know who discovered water. And I say, no, I don't know either, but I'm pretty sure it wasn't the fish. And there's actually a spot in Finding Nemo where they're swimming by Dory and they're like, hey, watch out for the water. And the one little fish says to the other, water? What's water? So part of it is when you're in the aquarium, when you're in that fish tank, you just don't know. And so having somebody who's on the outside looking in, I think that is part of that value that we bring. We cross-pollinate. You're in a business and you say, we really need to improve our customer experience. Well, when I'm working in banks and finance and wealth management company and restaurants and hospitality and hotels and all these different places, I can cross-pollinate and say, down at this commercial real estate property, when they give a tour at Hempel Real Estate, at Hempel Commercial Properties, they give a tour of the LaSalle Club, Josh Kersnack says, I need to get 3 wows out of it. And it's wow. Now, as you walk in, you don't realize that there's aromatherapy in there. They have music playing throughout the entire building. When you walk in and you see they have a gym, you're like, oh, that's pretty cool. But then you go through the gym and realize they have a sauna and a cold plunge. I'm like, really? You got a cold plunge in this Class A office space? Wow. Then I go through the door and they have a pickleball court. Nels, they have a pickleball court on the 4th floor. Then I go over to the podcast studio and he walks in, he hits the power button and all the lights start lighting up and all the cameras start coming on and it's just wow after wow. So if I see what they can do, and they call that the amenities arms race, okay, is what they're called, because there's space that's vacant and they're competing for everyone. And so we better get a rooftop garden over there, the fireplace and conversation room and all these little spaces. They better put some fire inside here to go break it and have breakout rooms and beautiful conference rooms. So that's really what's going on is I think you don't want somebody in that room. I've written about the story. A client, calls us up. It's a dermatology company and a pretty big dermatology company here in Minneapolis. They're interviewing for people to come and work with them. And they interviewed a few other people and then they get to meet with me, and it's 7:30 on Thursday night at the Minnetonka Country Club, which is a private course. And we're up in this private room with probably 2,000 square feet and a little table for like 6 of us to sit around the round table. I create my flip chart and then I'm drawing up on the board and I'm doing everything. And it's got a beautiful view of the Minneapolis skyline. We go through the whole thing and I just share with them my story and background, how I work with clients and how we're going to engage with them. And I'm talking about how I'm different and everything else. And they're nodding their heads and everything's good. And then Caleb, one of the owners, founder docs, says, Greg, I had one question for you. He said, what do you know about dermatology? And I'm like I'm in trouble, right? I know less than nothing about dermatology. I should put SPF 30 on, I think. I should stay out of the sun. The advice you would tell your kids. I told the truth. I said, I don't know anything, doc, really, other than I'm supposed to go see a dermatologist. I said, can I ask you, though, one question as we wrap up? Are we sitting here on a Thursday night at 7:30 when all of you planned a full day's work already? It's now 7:30. You could have been home with your family and your kids. Are we here because you don't know enough about dermatology? Or is it you have owners that are not aligned? You have a client experience that's not where you want it to be. You have processes that are not being followed. You have people who are underperforming. You have open seats. You have conflict between the senior nurses and the junior nurses and the scheduling coordinator. And before I got through the list, he's like, that. He said, that's why you're here. I said, well, listen, you're in luck because that we know a lot about. And so I got the job and went on the amazing journey with them. That is why I don't think you need this industry expert. Again, I'm just back to, I don't want to show up and be the consultant, right? I don't want to come in and, okay, you're an RV dealer. I'm going to tell you how to put the cars on the lot and how to change and how to pay your people compensation, everything. That's not why you're calling me. You're calling me because you got turnover. You can't hire people. You're getting blown up. You're not getting positive Google reviews. There's conflict between the sales and service department. They don't really see how they're all on the same team. They need someone to come in to help them clarify that vision, get the two brothers to work better together. That's what that's all about for us. You almost want to say, what do you know about our industry? Nothing. Great. That's a good starting point because then I have no assumptions. I'm not coming in and talking to you about, oh, you're a painting contractor. Let me tell you, what's your discounts at Benjamin Moore? What are you doing over here? How many ladders did you lose last year? Like, I sound like I know way too much. Like, how do you know we lose ladders? Yeah, because you leave them the job sites and they disappear or they fall off the trucks because no one tied it down. 200 ladders last year. That's a lot of money at $200 a ladder, right? I'm not going to earn my wage if I come in here and just tell you what you already know about that. I'm here to challenge your thinking, to get you to think differently, to get you to have an aha or an epiphany. That's even our tools, like the tools are meant to have an aha. And if I can do that and get you to have a breakthrough on your thinking or think about something differently, then I've done my job. That was a great session for us. So that's why I think getting somebody outside the industry is actually beneficial.
Yeah, I love that approach and why I just immediately fell in love with everything Pinnacle, because that is the way I view all of my engagements with clients, even long before we connected. There's this sentiment that if you don't have the answers, in other words, you're not the inside person, haven't worked with that company in that position, or you haven't even led that company before, you've never been in their physical seat. They're literally, you said it, there's no assumptions. Well, if you don't have any answers, there's only one thing you can do. You can ask really powerful questions. And the answers are already in the room, right? And they have them, but they need somebody to help pull them out.
All the talk about AI. Everyone's talking about AI. Everyone's talking about AI. And everyone's using AI. Everyone's talking about how AI is going to be a game changer. There's one thing that, and I use AI, I used it today. There's one thing that AI has never done in all the time I've been using it. And the one thing, and we could try and stump each other, you're probably not going to guess, but the one thing that AI never said to me is, I don't know. AI has been designed to always have an answer. And even if it needs to go out and not give you the right answer. Now, you and I both know if someone says to me, Melissa, Dad's left the business to 25% to each of us, what should we do? Well, that's prescription before diagnosis, right? We would say, I don't know. We need to talk about that further, or I don't have the answer for that. What should we do with our compensation? We're not able to hire CDL drivers because of this whole shortage and everything, and our comp is out of whack. And what should we do or whatever? And it's okay for us, right? It's okay for us to say, I don't have that answer. I can reach out to our network. Let me ask some other people who have CDL drivers. Let me find out what's going on in the industry. Let me go talk to some people. We can say that. We won't say that. And I think that is what keeps us human and what's going to keep us relevant. And it's also going to keep you humble. If you're on this pursuit of mastery and somebody says, that's a really good question. You want a guy who asks really good questions. You say, like, that's a really good question. How do you know it's a really good question? No one's ever asked me that before. So, you're getting to the edges, right? Like you started off, you want to get into good questions. Questions are the answer. And it's okay to say, I don't know. And it's okay to say, let me do some research. Let me get back to you. That is a big difference, again, between the guide and the AI. AI is going to give you an answer instantly in 0.6 seconds. Google's going to give you an answer. But none of them have ever said, I don't know. Let me get back to you.
I like that distinction. And it's true. There are certain areas that AI just accelerates everything. And then there are other areas it's probably just at least at this point in time and for the foreseeable future, just never going to touch. Much like
Right.
what we do inside of a room in an all-day session with a leadership team. You can't read the room without being in the room, which is why being in person with the team and using the whiteboard and the flip charts and all the exercises and tools we have to bring everything to the surface is so valuable and important. And people walk out of that going, wow, to your Hempel example, we want to create wows all day, every day. And it really comes from us not having answers, having a set of tools and asking really powerful questions.
When you're on Zoom, people could be checking their email. They could have another screen open. You don't really get their full attention. They can sneak in a text message. It's really hard to do that in person. And so we want them to be fully present. And it's the same thing with our kids. I've often said when the kids were growing up is how do kids spell love? And it's Time is how they spell love. You got to spend time with them and be present with them and just get up and read a story, go out and play, throw the ball, right? Spend time with them. And so if you want that leadership team to develop, you have to spend time. And if you're telling me that, carving out 2 days, carving out 1 day a quarter, you can't afford to take the team out of the field for 1 day, really? You can't take time to sharpen the axe to get people in alignment? Well, you got to take a lot of time the rest of the other 12 weeks in one-on-one meetings and in runs and do you have a second and drive-bys and everything else. That is just not a good business. It's like you wouldn't drop your kids at daycare and say, oh, I got really busy today. We didn't have time to feed them. We didn't change their diapers. We didn't get outside again today. You wouldn't drop your kids off there for 6 more months or 12 more weeks along that line.
So you've worked with hundreds of leadership teams throughout your career. Guided all kinds of different companies from all different industries, every different size, stage, you name it, you've worked with them. What are some of the hallmarks of the absolute best? The ones that stood out above and beyond, that just got outsized returns? Obviously, they went all in with you as their guide, but what were some of the characteristics of that team, either before they started or while working together, that really helped them leapfrog everybody else and get those incredible returns?
Most entrepreneurs start a business because they believe they can do it better than the person they were working for. They branch out on their own. They are working for a general contractor and start a general contracting practice, or they were in a law practice and broke away to start a law practice. It's number one. I would say there's probably 3 or 4 things that I'd see that are very common that really make it a really good fit. Number one is, do they believe their people are their competitive advantage? Do they really believe? Most people say it. Nell's right. They say, one of our strengths is our people. I'm like, but everyone's got people. And you don't think they got A players down the road? Of course they do, type of thing. But when you find an entrepreneur who really believes at their cell level that their people are their competitive advantage, wow, that is a great starting point. When they believe it's the tech or the app or the AI, or they believe they just, we got a Jeep store or GM store or whatever. If they believe that, that's a hard road to start off. It's almost like you're really going up a steep hill right away out of the gate. The second thing I've learned is you can't take teams where they don't want to go. And so there's some people who say they want to grow, they want to develop, right, and they want to improve. And you say, okay, well, let's go to the gym. We're going to lift some heavy weights and let's see how well you really want to improve. And after about 3 days, they're like, hey, I think I'm out. I'm good and I don't want to work that hard, type of thing. You can't take them where they don't want to go. And when you find out where they want to go and you can bring clarity and shine a bright light on that and keep them focused, that makes that journey so much better. It's like we just talked about, like the journey, the shortest line between 2 points is a straight line. Some people are like this army golf, right? It's left, right, back, forth. Let's go this way. No, let's get out of that. We're going to go this way. It's exhausting. If you've ever been in a caravan and you're like the 10th car back, well, the 10th car back has to go 90 miles an hour sometimes just to keep up that slingshot effect. I would say the third would be, is the entrepreneur, are they coachable? Some just have a lifestyle business and they don't really want to change, and they grew up with a silver spoon and they didn't have to go through the school of hard knocks. They haven't had to risk it all. They haven't had to put it on the line. Like you've heard this, the first generation builds it. The second generation enjoys it. The third generation destroys it. They're literally destroy the business. That's why there's so few five generation businesses in the United States. It just doesn't happen. So I think those are 3 of the things that I look for. And when I think of those companies, those leadership teams, I think where Ben's internship this summer is exactly that. It's a great culture. They took him in. They did not think, oh, let's just give him a babysitting job, right? His first day in the job, they gave him a spreadsheet that had 13,000 lines in the Excel spreadsheet. So see if you can make some sense out of this 13,000 lines. He's in Python and he's coding and he's leaned into it in computer science and math as he's doing a double degree. And I'm like, I had a choice where he went, and I wanted him just to go to a great leadership team who believed people were their competitive advantage, that he was going to leave learning. They didn't give him any slack at all. And fast forward, he's 3 weeks into his internship, and they're saying to him, hey, Ben, when you go back to school here in the fall, do you think you'd be available to do some projects? And I'm like, yes, like this is such a great place. But if you do it right and you keep the law of attraction, I'm not sure how it works, Nils, but you just attract those people into our life. Ben and I went out and played golf on Sunday, just a little father-son day, and we get paired up with another couple and they golf a lot and they've been everywhere. It's probably like the 15th hole. We finally like just say, Betty, what do you do? She's like, oh, I'm a chief, I'm in cybersecurity. And I was like, oh, who do you work for? I work for like United States government, one of those large agencies with tens of thousands of people. I'm the chief CISO officer, right? Security Information Officer. And of course, then, by this time now, we spent 3.5, 4 hours together and we're getting close to the end, maybe 3 holes left. And she says to Ben, actually, she knows his story. She says, Ben, have you decided where you want an internship next year? And he's like, no, in fact, I'm working on it. She says, well, we open up and start hiring in July and August for next year's. And, if you come to work for us, we actually pay your housing in Washington and we do these things. Well, it wasn't 24 hours later, right? They're connected on LinkedIn. They literally exchange phone numbers in the parking lot with the Apple where you just kind of tap it and put the notes in and everything. And that law of attraction, you just seem to attract people who do that. And so the more I've worked with teams that believe people are the competitive advantage, that are coachable, that want to do something special. I think I missed that part. They really believe they can do something special, like they're not happy with where they are. When you have that formula, that recipe, that fertile soil, you can grow oak trees, you can grow anything you want to grow when you've got that type of environment. And so I seem to attract those people. Our guides seem to attract those people. You hear the stories. It doesn't matter if it's a veterinarian or whatever. When I say this to our clients, Nels, we say all the time, you're in the people business. Yeah. You might be a car dealership, but you're just people doing automotive services to people. You're a bank, you're people doing banking services to people. You're a construction company, you're people doing construction services to people. And once that clicks for them, then they get on board with the client experience. They get on board with A players. They get on board with, I need to be a better leader today. If this is not working right, it's looking in the mirror and saying, hey, the bottleneck's at the top of the bottle. What are we doing to make it so hard for people to do the right thing? What are we doing? Where have we made it more complex than it needs to be? And when they're coachable, it's like bliss. It's like, you should read this article, and they come back and their article's all lined up versus, you should read this article. I haven't read it. You should read this article. You should read this article. Forget reading the book. That person's never going to read the book, right? 3 months, 6 months from now, they haven't read the book at all. So that's a little on the journey. And I think that's what they all have in common.
Yeah.
As they get it and they want to do something special. And like Hollywood, Nels, I think we're, business owners is the last group they can pick on, right? You pick on any other, demographic and they look like going to protest. But they pick on the business owners and they're always shown as, crooks and thieves and embezzling and con artists and all that stuff. That's not my experience. That's a very small percent. Most of them really care about their reputation, want to do the right thing, want to build something special, want people to wear their logo and be in their community and see them at the flea market and say, hey, we use you, or you're a great company, or you guys were just out and fixed my garage door or fixed my furnace or whatever. I love your brand type of thing. Most of them want to build that type of company along those lines. And that's the group that we're influencing. They're creating most of the jobs in America, and most of the opportunity in America are those small people who think we can do it better. That's gonna make us better.
I think something like 98% of all the jobs in America and all the people employed are employed by a small business, being anything below the gigantic companies, which is kind of a large percentage of the population. It's a lot. So I want to drill in on the people as a competitive advantage a little bit more. And perhaps you could share something that is a practical either tip or suggestion for people to take in that, are you really serious about people being competitive advantage? Maybe an example or two from one of your clients and just how they made that go from, oh, this is an idea, we should probably do this, to this is reality. This is how we live every day. This is how we transfer this. What are those key elements that have to come together for a leadership team to really live that and embody it?
So it probably starts with the leadership team. 100% of the time, Nels, as you know firsthand, is there's going to be a change in the leadership team. What got us here is not going to get us there. And so I've had all those examples, from the brother-in-law being in charge of the sales department. He was a great point scorer. We should never have made him a sales manager. He's frustrated. He's burnt out. He's now the guy that's working in the office on Friday afternoon, and all the salespeople are gone for the weekend, and he's unhappy. I've seen it where, the visionary is running the business, run the day-to-day, and they really need a really good right-hand person, and they need a second in command, and they hire that. And my gosh, I've got a team right now. I saw at the end of the first quarter, he said, for the first time in my life, I spent 2.5 weeks down in Florida fishing, read 3 books. It's amazing. I checked in with them on Monday of this week, and he's like, hey, I'm in Italy with the family. I'll be back Wednesday. Can we talk on Friday? Oh my gosh, what a difference it has made for them to actually get the right leadership team. So it starts there. We say the A players are free, and the A players truly are worth their weight in gold. When you get an A player on your team, they show up. You don't need to prod them. You don't need to motivate them. They show up and they're impact players right away. We really mean that about the people. Tell me who's on your team. Get the right people in the right seats, who believe what you believe, who want to go on this mission with you. Then they're missionaries and not mercenaries. Mercenaries are just here for the money, and they want how much of the bonus. And if I didn't get my bonus this year, I'm not going to stay around or whatever. Oh, feels so bad. You almost want to have a shower after those sessions. I remember one time I had a visionary call me and say, hey, Greg, I just want to let you know, I fired the second in command. It's Tuesday. We're meeting on Friday. And I just want to give you a heads up. It just might be me and you, because when I told everybody else, because the second in command, he's hired most of those people and they report to him. I said, hey, I just let him go. And I just want to let you know, if you believe that was the wrong thing and you can no longer come and perform your job, I'm going to give you a very nice severance package, and I will pay you to give you time to go away. But he said, I just want to let you know there might be just you and I. Of course, with that mentality, we showed up on Friday and everyone showed up. And we talked about it and we addressed the elephant in the room. And we said, yeah, they were just the wrong person in the wrong seat, and it wasn't a good fit. And we weren't going to grow with them at church. So we moved that person out. It starts with the leadership team. Once beyond that, then we got to encourage our clients on a regular basis to stop settling. We actually say, don't settle. And we've done some posts when we see DFS, don't frickin' settle or something like that, but don't settle along those lines. Because I think what happens is you've got people that are on the radar, they're really disruptive, they're negative, they're cancer, they're toxic, they're vocal. Those are the easy people to spot. Then you got those people who are the A players and you love and they're crushing it. Sometimes you've got those quiet people just below the waterline, just off the radar, who are actually impacting your culture. And if you don't proactively go look at that, and as you know, we've got this great exercise, right, called Level Up.
Yep.
It's 5 questions. And it's such a great exercise to actually smoke out and bubble up and percolate up, like go on that archaeological dig about who's underperforming. Just a quick recap for the audience here. 5 questions you could ask anytime. Question number 1, I asked the leadership team is, hey, everyone, write down 2 areas you're crushing it as a leader. And they're like, oh yeah. And they write it down, the energy's going up, or you take a lap around the table, Nels, and they go, I'm a great mentor. I'm setting vision, direction. I'm driving revenue. Okay, everyone, great. The reason I asked question 1 is so I can ask question 2. Question 2 is, in your heart and soul, what are 2 areas where you're underperforming? You really could do this better. You need to step up. And they're like, oh, you can hear the groans. And they're right. I need to get more time in the field. I really need to spend more time working on the business, mentoring, coaching, developing the team. I really could do a better job lifting people up. And so that we go around the table and they all share that. And I said, so you just proved everyone got room for improvement. The reason I asked question 2 is so I can ask question 3. Question 3 is, this not a witch hunt? You got 100 employees, the rule of, 80-20 rules alive and well here. Who on the team is underperforming? It doesn't matter if they're brand new, they just showed up this week. Maybe they're 6 weeks away from retirement. Maybe we backed up the truck, right? We just buried them in work or projects. Maybe they don't have the right tools. Maybe they're working next to people who are propping them up and they're trying to hold it all together. It doesn't matter why. Everyone, look down your list, think about who is underperforming, visionary, second in command. You go anywhere in the company. If Anil doesn't call out the person in the warehouse, you get to call out the person in the warehouse or the sales or whatever. So it's usually about 20% of the organization. So if they tell me they have 100 people or 140 people, I'm going to write 28 slots on the board. I'm going to go around the table, and turns out you give them 20 spots, they're going to get 20 names. The reason I asked question 3 was so I could ask question 4. And question number 4, this is not a data question. This is an emotional reaction question. And the question is this. I'm going to go through these names one at a time. I want you to look at the names you just put on the list. If that person walked in tomorrow and quit, how would you feel? Would you be sad? Oh my gosh, I'm so disappointed. We really tried. That was a great person and I'm going to be sad, but we're going to be okay. Or would you be happy, relieved because that person is not doing it, but you just don't have the courage to have the hard conversations and they just did it for you, so you're actually relieved? Or would you be freaking out? Like I would try and save them. Oh my gosh, they are the only person that can do this project, or clients love them, or they're doing a great job with their client experience and to do that. We go down that list and then we go number 1 and okay, save, happy with a little smiley face we go through. Typically, the 80-20 rules alive and well. 14 of them were okay if they leave. And then I say, okay, so 14 out of 20 people were okay if they leave. 6 we try and save. So then the reason I asked question 4 is so I could ask question 5. Question 5 is, who are the rock stars? Who are those people that literally you're starting this business over tomorrow? They're coming with you. You're going to go start in the same industry. They're coming with you. Who are they? Same thing, 80-20 rule. 120 people, 140 people, 100 people. I put 20 names on the board and they give me the names. Then I have some fun with them now. I say, oh my gosh, if I ever started an HVAC business or a private lending business or a dermatology business, let me get a picture of those. They're like, oh. And then I say, should I post this other one on social media? The people that you'd be happy? I can help them get that. No, so we have some fun with them. And then I have a conversation. I say, so was there any ahas here or any? And they're like, yes, I didn't realize we had that many people. How big is that payroll, right? Those 20 people are like, oh my gosh, that's $2 million or more type of thing. And I say, where are you spending your time? You spending your time with your rock stars, the people that would come with you, or you spend your time with the people that literally you would be happy if they left? So we got to do our job. And then that sometimes becomes a rock. We've had some teams, but it comes back to that whole essence of people. If you can imagine they have a company, and we can help them improve those 14 people. Maybe we set a rock this quarter to improve 7 of the 14. And we can coach them up above the bar and get them to be A potential players or B+ players. We can get them to move up. If we're doing that, then we're better leaders today than we were. Our organization is healthier than it was. The trend is our friend. The direction is our friend. And we are being good stewards of the investment. We have a salary cap, and we're going to put the best team on the field to win. That is one of a lot of tools that we have, 85, 90 tools, not including all the cool AI tools and things that we're rolling out. But these tools are designed to have that aha effect, have an epiphany, have them be able to have a harder conversation around people. It's not adversarial. It's not who we putting out a performance and improvement plan. It's just a conversation that we're going to have about, truly, you said it. It was one of your differentiators. You said your business runs on people. Let's have those conversations. Let's not wait till it's to the point when only calls it the last act of cowardice. When you finally got to go in, you got to have a meeting and the boss says, okay, Greg's got to go on Friday. You're like, okay, I'll let Greg go on Friday. And you go in and have it. And Greg is absolutely shocked, surprised. He cries. He's a little emotional anyway. He cries. He has a meltdown type of thing. Lencioni says, that was your last act of cowardice. You didn't have the courage to tell me all along the way. You didn't have the courage to be proactive. You didn't have the courage to say, Greg, if you don't make some changes, or maybe this is not right for you, or maybe you should look for another position or whatever. If we didn't have that, if my only hard conversation is to tell you you're not going to make it, or today's your last day, we're going to talk about your transition, then you're probably not meant to be a great leader for long.
One of my favorite exercises, what I love about that is just the perfect example of everything we were talking about earlier. How you don't know who those 20 people are, but they do, right?
Yes.
But you don't know and can't tell them what to do, but they know what to do. You just ask the right questions in the right order, in the right way, at the right time to surface all the stuff that was underneath. And that's the most powerful piece in the room that we do, is that literally I am there to guide the conversation just as you described. And if I can help them have an aha, then that is infinitely more valuable than me telling them something that they should do, right? Oh,
That's
at this company, we did XYZ, so you should do it. That's a guaranteed fail, always, because no two companies are ever the same and they're different, they're unique. So what's more powerful is that question. And that's why 5 questions is all it takes. And you heard Greg right there, but having somebody from the outside guide your team through that, that's a game changer.
because if we had asked like who needs to improve, there would have been silence.
Oh,
Like we do
everybody's
ask
good.
in the audition, we say, well, what percentage of your people are A players? Oh, they're all A players. And we know statistically that's not possible. According to Gordon Ferry, Boston Consulting Group, all these people, the Gallup organization, like all these people do massive surveys on this are like, well, it's probably 8 to 11% of the population are A players. And you just happen to have all of them.
It's pretty lucky. Pretty lucky.
Pretty lucky. We want to help continue to develop people and grow people and gain them to think about that in that positive light. That's what they do. They're here to grow people who grow the business. They're not here to grow the business, right? They're here to grow people who grow the business.
That's right.
And then if you're there's probably a correlation, a one-to-one correlation between how much work the leadership does, like they themselves have to do, versus how much work they're doing on the business, developing, coaching, inspiring, motivating, recruiting, doing all that other stuff to help that business continuously grow along those lines, that line of sight you talked about.
Awesome. Greg, as we begin to close out here, I want to bring up your current book, Peak Performance. I would love for you to share just a little bit about what it is, why you wrote it, why now. And then I know you're also in the midst of writing a new book. And if you could share a little tease about what that one's going to be like, we would love to hear.
Sure. So Peak Performance came out last summer. I felt it was just a good culmination of everything. As I mentioned earlier with the story about Jill, it was just kind of a nod back to my roots. And I wanted it to really just validate and put a stake in the ground and share some of the stories of people who have been on this journey with me for over a decade around people, purpose, playbooks, performance. And the whole idea is the 5 business principles that every leadership team, if you made a list of topics of everything that's preventing us from growing or did our brutal facts exercise, Nils, and there's 60, 70 post notes up on the wall. What's preventing us from growing? They ram all down. And then you said well, actually, we don't have 60 or 70 things here. Could we get some people to go organize that for us? And then they come back and say, we got this whole people bucket over here. And then we got this one about processes and systems. And okay, so that sounds like it's playbooks. And then what else do we have over here? Oh, we got this whole idea. We don't know strategy and where we're going and why and how we're differentiated. Okay, that sounds like a bucket. And then there's always this financial bucket about pricing and margin and cost, expenses and whatever. And it's like a magic trick. This is how it turns out every time. What else would it be, right? What else would possibly present it? Now, what's really cool about that is I say, leadership team, this is your role. Is you come into work every single day and you need to be focused, follow one course until successful. Focus is an acronym. Get the right people in the right seats, doing the right things. Charge them and inspire them with a purpose, a why are we doing, what's at the top of that mountain, what's worth the climb, why are we doing this? Empower them, give them a responsibility and authority. Give them a playbook so we don't have these random acts of experience where if I work with Nels, I get this experience. I work with Mary Jo, I get a different experience. And I work with Billy Bob, I get a different experience. No, we have to systemize and we fly planes and build skyscrapers and we do amazing things, including surgery with a checklist. And then if you perform at a high level, if you do those 4 things, if you just come in every day and focus on those 4 Ps, profits improve. And profit is just feedback from the marketplace on the value you're bringing. You might be a great father, husband, great member of your church, great member of the nonprofit, be a great soccer coach. However, there are companies in every industry that have different profit outcomes. And if you're in construction and you have 2% or 4% or 8% or 12%, in every industry, there is a company, I'll just use construction. It's the same building codes, the same building materials, everything's the same, the trades, whatever. Why is it somebody can build a house and make 2% and somebody can make 12% and somebody, a high-end custom builder, might make 20%? It's because of those other 4 things that give them that. So that was the essence of it. It's a very simple book. It's 6 chapters really where I go in deep and I share stories and I share actual best practices. And I really think I've featured some amazing clients of mine that have done amazing things that just show up, go walk Josh Kursnack's facilities, go for a workout with Discover Strength, call up the Pillow Window people, go over to Park Jeep people. I just had some of our guides over there at Nels last week showing sales mastery, and they went over and took a tour, and they're like, I've never seen a dealership like this, run like this, and had Jonathan and David address them and talk to them and share it. It felt really good. It's my coming of age. So that's peak performance. Book number 5, I'm well in the works with. We're about 19,000, 20,000 words in. It'll probably end up about 30,000 words. And then what I do is I say, okay, how do I tighten it up? How do I get rid of the 20% that I just feel is just fluff? This is right out of Essentialism. Steven Spielberg's new movie is out, and every time he would win, his editor almost always won best editor as well, because his whole idea was make the noise go away. I'm really leaning into this idea of a guide, and it's called Go With the Guide is the working title right now. In the role, I'm going to talk about the origin of guides and how they've been around for a long time. I'm going to talk about how they're showing up today in the world, in our lives, and how we're guides. How to choose a guide, how to select a guide as well is going to be in there. And I want us to do some workshops, and I want you to do some thinking about the guides that have been in your life that influenced you. And who's your next guide? We all need that guy. We need someone to come alongside of us and go on that journey with us. And it makes the journey so much better. The word joy is in the word journey. And when you're on a journey, when you're on a hike with somebody else to enjoy the view with, or to enjoy Italy with, or to enjoy the sunset or the vistas, is always so much more valuable. This is going to be very different. I'm going to try and make it less about stories and to really get us to realize that there is a very important role for guides. It's almost like I mentioned mentor at the top of this, that he was an original guide thousands of years ago. And that we've almost lost that, Nils, in today's culture. We don't have mentors. We look down at that. And I would love to see a resurgence in mentors. And yesterday was at the Mayo. I was talking to the doc who's been there 40 years and how they still have these kids go through 80-hour weeks now for residency. And when he said, we know that's the crucible and that's the fire and what we want to do. And I really want to talk about how everybody needs that guide and the purpose of it. And where's your next guide? Who's that next guide that you want to go on that journey with? Who inspire you? We use this in our community right now. There's guides who are ahead of us on the journey, who we aspire to be like. They have mad skills. They're really good at certain aspects. But there's also people behind us who look up to us, who look up to you, who look up to Steve Burnett, who look up to others because they're further up the mountain. And they're inspired by you. And you know this, what we do is we turn around and we reach our hand back and we help those people up that mountain. And that's really what makes the journey so successful. So I want it to be a very different type of book. And I wanted to talk about mentoring. And the concept I want to explore in there is even reverse mentoring. So reverse mentoring, when I mentioned this to the doc yesterday, he said, ooh, I've never heard that term before. Because, of course, in medicine, there's definitely residency and all these things you do. But I said, well, reverse medicine is where, you have all this nuance type of thing. You've been at it a long time, just like we just talked about, this nuance type of thing. But these younger people might have all this tech, right? They grew up on a mobile device. How do we do reverse mentoring, where you can show me how to use tech to my advantage and make my life a little bit easier? And I can show you what tech can't do for you. Tech could not ask those questions. We were working on a tool today. I shot 19 videos today, actually, for our academy. And when we're in there shooting that, the AI, if I said, come up with a value proposition for Nils to be a guide, the AI would just pull out generic things on the whatever. But if I could stop it and be nuanced and say, well, don't forget the valuation compass and our assessments. And oh, yeah, about the onboarding. We give them a website. Oh, don't forget sales mastery. Oh, how about the trailhead? How about the navigator software? I can literally give it the stuff to actually help. And so I explained this to the doc about reverse mentoring. He goes, oh my gosh. He said, that is brilliant. He said, when you write that book, can you send me a copy? Because I'd like to learn more about reverse mentoring. So that's a little sneak preview of Go With a Guide. We love it to come out this fall and just in time for Thanksgiving and Christmas and reading time, gift giving time.
Oh, Greg, that's awesome. I'm super excited for Go With a Guide, and that sentiment is just perfect. And so I just want to say thank you so much for spending some time with me this afternoon and sharing your stories, your entrepreneurial journey, your passion. I can see it alive and well. The audience can hear it in everything you do. And that was one of the very first things that attracted me to you when we met for the first time. I think you were sitting in that exact chair in that scene. I remember it vividly, and you've been a tremendous guide for me. And that couldn't have come at a better time in my life, and all things happened for some reason. And Steve gave me that call, and I got on the phone with you, and then this is exactly what needed to happen at this time. So I want to personally say thank you. And I appreciate everything that you've built in this community and what you've put together and how you've been a guide literally for the entire community. Also your clients. I know you're an incredible family person, extremely generous. So just thank you, Greg.
Nils, of course, it's my pleasure. And this is why I get up in the morning. I want to retire from the things I want to retire from, and I've done that. And I want to spend my time helping other people, helping other guides build practices and helping them with their clients, right? One guide, one client, one mountain at a time.
That's right.
And that's part of leaving a legacy. So thank you for helping spread the word. Thank you for the work that you're doing with your clients, and you're making a difference every day. And never forget that how important the work that we're doing and the impact you're having.
There you have it. Another great episode of the Courage and Breakthroughs podcast. If you'd like to continue the conversation, go to nilsvinje.com. That's NILS, V as in Victor, INJE.com. You can listen to previous episodes, apply to be a guest on the show, or get in touch with me. And until next time, have a wonderful rest of your day.